Today, a minister drops a bombshell in the Drew Peterson murder trial. He testified that Peterson's fourth wife, Stacy, said she was living with a murderer. Kim Vadas is at the Will County Courthouse now with more.
Stacy lied on her husband's behalf to police. Key testimony today from the pastor of Drew Peterson's fourth wife, Stacy. Neil Schori testified he met Stacy at a coffee shop where she spilled details about Drew mysteriously disappearing in the middle of the night, just before the body of his third wife, Kathleen Savio, was found dead in a bathtub. Drew came back dressed all in black, removed his clothes, and then continued to put them and a bag of women's clothes that Stacy says was not hers in the washing machine. Drew telling Stacy police would want to talk to her and coached her for hours on what to say.
I think it was almost like Stacy speaking from heaven above through Pastor Schori, and we heard loud and clear again that Drew Peterson is a murderer.
But the defense blasted Schori for not coming forward sooner or stopping Stacy from going home. Attorney Joe Lopez shouted, "She told you she lived with a murderer. You let her go back to the house? It's not my job to stop somebody," Schori replied.
Somebody tells you they live with a murderer and you do nothing? Doesn't that defy common sense?
Several other witnesses were banned or withdrawn. Savio's divorce lawyer that could have corroborated Schori, and an investigator who found pristine cash receipts Drew kept in a folder along with an article about Savio's death, a possible alibi.
Nobody saves receipts from that long ago, pristine state receipts of, a lunch or Krispy Kreme donuts.
The prosecution never rests, but we should close our case tomorrow.
Just across the hall from this case, another one. A former stripper took the stand today in the Christopher Vaughn murder trial. Crystal Miller used to work as a topless dancer and testified that Vaughn came in for private dances in June of 2007. She described Vaughn as timid and that he told her he was single and had no children. She also said Vaughn made a strange reference to knowing the future. Vaughn is accused of shooting his wife and their 3 children to death. He claims his wife shot the kids and him and then killed herself. We're going to go back to the Peterson trial, and former Cook County State's Attorney Thomas Glasgow joins us now. Nice to see you again.
It's good to see you.
We got to talk about Peterson because a lot happened today, and this may lead to the state resting its case tomorrow, which I think was a surprise to some, but not to you.
No, they actually have built a very, very strong circumstantial case. Remember, there's no direct evidence in this case. So to piece together a murder case, you're taking one card and another card and another card, and they've had upwards to 72 different witnesses come in and testify, and at the end you've painted this picture much like a Monet where you take different dots and then you stand back and look at it and you've got the picture of a murder. And that's what they're attempting to create with the circumstantial evidence that they presented. They ended on a very strong note today with the pastor testifying from the statements from the dead, the hearsay statements that were very powerful from Stacy herself as to what occurred that night that Kathleen Savio was dead.
There is no physical evidence that puts Drew Peterson at this scene that I've seen, and I know Kim Vadas has been covering this, but how difficult will that be for a jury to decide when there's no physical evidence that ever puts Drew Peterson in that bathroom when she died?
Well, the classic example that prosecutors use is it snows, you go to sleep at night, there's no snow on the ground, you wake up the next morning, there's snow on the ground, you know it snowed, you don't have to have direct evidence or eyewitnesses to see that it actually happened, but you know that it snowed. That's the same conclusion that they're asking the jury to come to in this matter. They're also utilizing the fact that Peterson was a former police officer, and because he was a former police officer, he's going to be smart enough not to leave the direct evidence that would lead him to the crime. That was the close of today's arguments when they were talking about the receipts and the alibi that he was attempting to build.
I want to talk about the defense's case in a moment here, but I've got to ask you about this, and I've been wondering since we've been reporting that the jury is wearing the same color clothing nearly every day. They're literally talking about what they're going to wear. When you saw that as you were in court, or maybe you never did, but what does that say? Is that solidarity? Because when they get in there to deliberate, solidarity is a difficult thing to find.
That's correct. Remember, it has to be a unanimous decision, and today they all wore gray. And
what's going on?
They're obviously talking with each other. Perhaps they're bored. Perhaps they're trying to come up with some kind of game to see, keep themselves entertained. But it does show that these people can work together. And that's important for both the defense and the prosecution to coming to a unanimous verdict. That also sends a message that they are going to work together to get through this evidence and determine whether he's guilty or not guilty.
Before we let you go, let's talk about the defense's case. If the state rests tomorrow, we'll get to hear their argument, and clearly they think there's just hearsay and nothing more.
That's correct. They're going to make their motion to dismiss the case if the state rests, and when they do, they're going to say there's no direct evidence. I don't think that a judge is likely to grant that motion. In a motion for directed verdict, you've got to blatantly miss one of the elements of the crime, and if you don't miss that, they're going to put it into the hands of the jury.
When does it go to the jury, you think?
It'll go to the jury after the defense puts on their case, and I think they're going to have to put on their case. They're going to have to present evidence. In a case like this, they don't have to. They don't have to at any time, but I think they have to in this case to rebut that evidence that the state has put on.
If you're resting, you're the state's attorney, tomorrow you rest your case, you know this jury has solidarity. Are you feeling pretty good about what you just did for the past few weeks? Do you think they feel pretty good, especially after today? I get the inclination you do.
Absolutely. The powerful evidence that they put together and the gasping, the actions that you see the jury make in response to defense objections at this point, I think the prosecution is winning this battle between winning the jury over and the evidence presented in this case. Drew Peterson has always been convicted in the court of public opinion. It's a matter of whether or not he'll be convicted in this court.
Yeah. Thomas, I look forward to seeing you on set when the verdict breaks, because we like to have your insight at
Thanks
that time.
a lot. I appreciate it.
We're going to take a commercial break. Still ahead, surprising news about West Nile virus right here in Illinois.